So, Jess, you know me, I love to know how it all started. What is the backstory that brought you here to to your books, your business, and your brand?
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for having me. And it's been such an incredible journey. And I'm excited to speak to your audience in particular because I think we all know what it's like to have this entrepreneurial spirit and how oftentimes there isn't a clear path ahead of you. It's like you're only just taking the next step to find your way. And for us, for me, I can talk about myself and then I'll talk about how I kind of teamed up with my brothers. I've had anxiety since I was born. I remember so much of my childhood because I often had really severe anxiety and I have these moments burnt in my head. I struggled in school often. I had to go to a speech pathologist. I couldn't read until I was much older, and so all of that was this immense amount of anxiety, which I just learned how to deal with. Because I've had it for so
Mm,
long, I didn't know there was an alternative of not having anxiety. I just felt like
mm,
this is who I am. And I'm just struggling to feel like I can keep up with the world and to fit in and to hide the anxiety. And when I was there was a moment that I think really changed things. And I was 17 years old. And my brother, who was in his 20s at the time, Nick, had found these old cassette tapes of Tony Robbins in my parents' basement that my mother
I
bought
know,
from an infomercial.
I know that guy.
Yeah, you know that guy. And I'll loop back to how he now is involved in our app. But I'll start with saying that he found these tapes. And then we also found Wayne Dyer and, so many amazing people. And as a 17-year-old, he introduced this to me. And I was a junior in high school. And it absolutely changed my life. I went from always feeling like I wasn't enough to realizing, wow, I actually have a lot of great skills. I'm really good at communicating, at understanding people's emotions, at empathy. And so I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know how. I saw my mom as a therapist and I felt like it wasn't my path because I saw all these new books and all these new authors. And I felt like, wow, things are unfolding so quickly in the world of personal health and personal development. I was just fascinated. So when it was time for me to go to college, I made a deal with my parents. I said, let me go to a really affordable in state school and let me use the difference in money because my middle brother went to Boston College. So I said, let me use that difference in money to take any course I want. So I did hypnotherapy, NLP, every Tony Robbins training. I just immersed myself in this world. And during that, I discovered tapping. So it was the older brother, Nick, who introduced me to it. And even though I was reading a lot about personal development, my anxiety was so physical that I could kind of
Wow.
talk my way out of it a little bit. It definitely helped, but it was so physical that I still felt trapped in the anxiety and felt like it was something that I needed to live with. And it wasn't until I discovered tapping that I had a real physical shift. Like it wasn't just emotions or the way I was viewing the world, it was physically my body was able to relax. And it's like you're holding a heavy backpack for so long that you get used to it. And then you take it off and you're like, whoa, like I didn't even know you could feel this light. And Nick and I both went on our own journeys of just never thinking it would be a career, but just using it with ourselves, using it with all our friends. Like, hey, this is amazing. You want to try this? And then around that time, Heidi, you probably remember this. The Secret came out. Remember The
Oh,
Secret?
yes, yes,
It
yes. The
became
movie The
the
Secret.
best-selling documentary film about the law of attraction, and it was the best-selling DVD. So we were watching it and we saw all these experts and we began to realize that a lot of these experts were using tapping. And when it came to the law of attraction, what they didn't cover in that film, which a lot of the experts were speaking on their own, was the importance of looking at the emotional blocks, at looking at allowing yourself to take a moment to weed before you plant that seed. And so at that time, Nick came to me and he's like, I think we should make a documentary film. And I was like, well, I think that is a horrible idea because we have no experience in film and we have no money. Um, but he was like, I think we can do this. I have a friend from high school who like does graphic design, and his friend Nick Palizzi joined us. And Nick put all the money on credit cards. And I remember the day all the film equipment showed up in he lived in a tiny apartment on top of a house in Connecticut. And all this film equipment came. And luckily, like YouTube was around. So we would YouTube, like, how do you light? How do you light an interview? How does this microphone work? And we created a documentary film about tapping where we interviewed all of these experts, many of them who were in the secret, who already had a platform. And we also took 10 participants and we found a retreat center in Connecticut and we filmed a weekend with them and then followed up with them 6 months later. We began to sell the film, Heidi, before it was complete to help fund the film. We knew there was an audience for tapping. So we made a website. We talked about the film. We showed short clips that were ready. And we began pre-sales to help us be able to help finish this film. And
that's amazing.
You know, I thought Oprah would find me. Like, that was my plan. My plan was we make a film, Oprah would call, and my life would change.
There's still time. There's still time for that, young lady. That's why we're doing this.
Yeah. But my point is, you know, that's the plan. And then you think like, well, what is the next step? And the next step of our evolution was learning internet marketing. And at that time, there was no Zoom. You couldn't interview people on the internet. And so Nick came up with this idea. He said, you know, there's a lot of webinars out there, but it's like you do a class and it's once a week. He's like, what if we make it feel like an event and it's 7 days? And for 24 hours, you can listen to 2 speakers. The next day, 2 new speakers come up. And I was like, oh, that's a cool idea. And I was living in Brooklyn at the time and had nowhere to record. I had my dad's cousin who's an attorney, and he gave me a key to his office. So when all the lawyers would leave, I would unlock this. I was like 21 years old. I would unlock this office. I'd go to one of his phones and I would use Audio Acrobat. And I would record these interviews with these experts.
Amazing.
And we
resourceful.
Thank you. And we put on this online event. Our servers crashed because 50,000 people showed up because we tapped into a community. And that is the moment that changed my life. That was like what I thought Oprah would do for me, is starting to do online events. And then it evolved from there. But that was the moment when we learned online marketing and we learned to do these online events that things really changed for us.